Hi, I'm Jasmine, and this is Not Another PD. It's for helping professionals who are tired of theoretical training that doesn't translate to the work you actually do. Here, we talk boundaries, leadership, systems, and how to protect your well-being while doing complex work every day. I'm so glad you're here. Episode 41. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you back on the Not Another PD podcast. I wasn't planning to record a solo episode this week, but I had a few guests that were unfortunately unwell, so I needed to reschedule and juggle things around. I had no idea what I wanted this episode to be about, but I went through my phone notepad. That is where I put all of my ideas, any quotes that I come across that I like. It holds my to-do list. It's sort of everything on my phone notepad. There's always so many ideas that I have in there. So I went through my phone notepad and was looking for inspiration, and I found it. So if anyone hasn't heard of the Let Them theory, it wasn't created by Mel Robbins, but it's really been popularized by Mel Robbins. So she has a book on it, and if you go on her Instagram, and I'll link all of this in the show notes, you will have a look, and I'm pretty sure the Let Them theory has its own Instagram handle and page as well. And I'd heard about it. I'd heard it mentioned in conversation. I'd seen it on Instagram, and I'd heard it mentioned on different podcast episodes. And I thought, I need to know what the fuss is about with the Let Them theory. So this isn't a book review at all. It's a reflection on a few parts of the book and a few quotes in particular from Mel Robbins in her book that really resonated with me, really spoke to me, and hopefully they will also be helpful for you as you're listening to it. So the main question that this episode is exploring is, if you're the one person that you'll spend your entire life with, how are you actually treating yourself? And as helping professionals and leaders, we spend so much of our time thinking about others, caring about others, supporting others make the absolute most empowering decisions that are going to support their lives, their own well-being. And if we have families as well, often we care for them. We might care for children, we might care for elderly relatives, elderly parents perhaps. And we're constantly in the role of carer, both often professionally and in our personal lives. And if you're a leader in the helping professions, you also have the added responsibility of caring about and looking after your team to make sure that they're doing okay as well. So we care so much about other people, but often it comes at the expense of ourselves and to the detriment of our own health and well-being. One of the quotes that I absolutely love from Mel Robbins in the book is, "You are the only love of your entire life." And because, like many of you, I'm so time poor, so the thought of having to dedicate sufficient time to sit down, physically read a book, especially a long book, it doesn't really match with my busy schedule, and being at school holidays currently, it just carving out time to read the amount of books that are on my to-do list, my must-read list, it's not really possible. Although I love a good physical book, I love to hold it, I love to read it, I find it so relaxing, so therapeutic. And I have, if you're seeing this on video, I do have a selection of books behind me as well. But my one tip for anyone like me, which is probably all of you, who is really, really time poor, I prefer the audio ebook option because I feel like I spend so much time driving, whether it's driving to pick kids up from school, driving to meetings, driving to the gym or doing a workout, I always have AirPods in. So having a book read out to me, it's an absolute game changer. And it has meant that I've been able to read book after book and not need to devote hours and hours of my time in doing so. If you're someone who absolutely prefers to pick up a book and can set aside that time, that's also amazing. But I do prefer the audio ebook option, especially when the author themselves narrates the books. So that quote, "You are the only love of your entire life," the first thing that came to mind is that it's quite confronting. So hearing Mel say that, or if you're reading the old school version of the book, if you're reading it, it is quite confronting, because if you think about it, whether we're parents or carers or siblings, well, we're not with them all of the time. Even with our colleagues, we spend so much of our time at work, but we're not with them constantly. And the one person who we are with constantly is ourselves. So how do we actually invest in ourselves? And as I've mentioned, we invest so much in our teams, clients, our organizations, in our relationships with others that we care for, so family, friends. So we invest so much time and effort in other people, but how do we actually invest in ourselves? How do you spend your time? How do you look after your own well-being? And also, how do you ensure that you have boundaries? Are you assertive about your boundaries and what you need and what you expect, how you expect to be treated from other people? And recently, I've been having a lot of thoughts about this, and I created a visual which I called my physical well-being wheel, and I shared it on my social media pages, so you can have a look if you haven't already checked it out. And I was looking at different aspects of my well-being. So I started with my physical well-being. I put in the different segments, the different ways that I take care of my own physical health. So in there I had reformer Pilates, I had gym, going for a walk along the beach, stretching between meetings. And this is key for me because my business is largely online, although I have been going to more face-to-face meetings now. I'm based in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, but largely I'm sitting down for such long periods in the day. And even when I'm driving, I'm also sitting down. So having stretch breaks in between meetings is something that I really value. It's really important to me. And in my office, I have a Pilates ring, I've got a yoga mat, and sometimes I stretch in between meetings. Sometimes I do squats. If anyone saw what I do in between meetings, well, you'd probably laugh. But these are things that actually help. They actually help give me more energy, and I'm less cranky when I go from one online meeting to the next all day, every day. And we know that from the COVID pandemic that's all we were doing all day, every day. It really does take a toll on your body, and you start to feel you're quite drained by the end of the day. There was a very early episode on the podcast as well that I was speaking to my exercise physiologist, Nat, and she was talking about some specific exercises that we can do if we want to get more movement into our work days, which is amazing. Also on my physical well-being wheel, I had nutrition, sleep and recovery, and my skincare ritual. So these are things that I do for myself, and I don't consider them luxurious or luxuries. I consider them essential for my own well-being, for my own physical health, my own mental health, and it actually helps me be able to show up better as a leader and for other people, because I know I'm prioritizing myself and my own health and well-being, and I'm not leaving myself so depleted that everyone else gets the best of me, and then I just get the rest of me. So I acknowledge that everyone's different, like their physical well-being wheels or your well-being wheel overall will look different. And that's just that's just what it looks like for me. And you could, for you, it could just be about going for a walk on your lunch break. And that could be something that's essential to your well-being. My second favorite quote from the Let Them theory is, no one owes you anything, but you owe yourself everything. If I could write, in fact, I might actually write some of these phrases and create beautiful visuals and frame them to have around my office as a reminder. I'll add that to my to-do list in my notepad. So nobody else can actually prioritize you the way you can. So no one is going to take care of your health for you, to put boundaries in place for you, to ensure you get enough sleep, to ensure that you actually engage in regular supervision and that you take your annual leave. So these are just a few examples. So even myself, like I provide a lot of clinical supervision for both helping professionals and leaders. And even for myself, as a supervisor to others, I can encourage the amazing helping professionals and leaders that I support to take their annual leave, to take care of themselves, to get enough sleep, to put boundaries in place, to do what they can to optimize their own physical health and mental health and spiritual health. But I can't do it for them. So I can't book someone's annual leave on their behalf. And even when I was a leader in a government role, I could encourage my team to take leave, to ensure that they're spending enough time taking care of themselves. But I couldn't physically force them to take leave. Only you can do that. So you're the one who owes yourself everything. And the last episode 40, I was talking about the circle of control. And this is important to bring back into this conversation, because while your organization has responsibilities for you, such as, for example, approving your annual leave where permissible so you can take the time off, there's certain things that are within our circle of control. So all of those things that I mentioned, your own health, your boundaries, your sleep and taking enough time to rest, your supervision, your annual leave or sick leave if you're unwell, these are things that are within the circle of control that you have control over. And no one can do these things for you. So no one owes you anything, but you owe yourself everything. Powerful, right? Quote 3 is, are these the table scraps you're prepared to accept, or would you like a 5-star meal? And in the context in which in the book Mel Robbins was talking about specifically in relationships. So do you accept being not treated amazingly well and getting, like table scraps, or would you like to be, to be treated well, to be treated respectfully? So I'm going to be using it in a context that's relevant to us, because I'm not a relationship coach, so I'm not going to be talking specifically about that. But what can this concept of table scraps look like in a professional setting? So table scraps is like, in what instances in your role are you settling for good enough, or well, actually not even good enough, because table scraps aren't good enough. It's a below standard, below par. And when I was growing up, I'm probably showing my age here, but anytime if you'd go out to dinner and you had leftovers, it might have just been, a few meatballs and a few pieces of potato, we would always ask for a doggy bag. Whether you had a dog at home or not, the phrase was, can I have a doggy bag? And then so the restaurant would take it away and put it in a container, and you would take it home whether you had a dog or not. As I mentioned, sometimes the doggy bag didn't really last further than the car park and I'd already finished it, but that's okay. But essentially the whole reason why it was called a doggy bag is because you're bringing leftovers that you've essentially rejected for your pet. It's not like you wouldn't, for example, have a few meatballs left, a few pieces of potato, and go to one of your best friend's house and be like, hey, I bought you dinner, and give them your table scraps. You wouldn't give them your doggy bag, right? So think about that. If that helps you, if you're a visual person, think about imagining, a few leftovers from dinner as our kind of table scraps. So table scraps professionally, in which we're really allowing ourselves to accept far below the bare minimum, is skipping lunch, never taking leave, having poor boundaries or non-existent boundaries, just allowing yourself to feel constantly exhausted and not doing anything about it, accepting that being disrespected, whether it's by colleagues, by a manager, by clients, is okay, and not doing anything about it. Also, if you're someone who has experienced any form of bullying or discrimination or any psychological harm in the workplace, also not speaking up. Like, that's really important. If we all deserve to feel respected in the workplace, and if we're accepting table scraps, then that's far below what we should be accepting. We should be treating ourselves equivalent to a 5-star meal at a Michelin star restaurant. Like, how have we normalized things? How have we normalized table scraps that we really should never have? And think about anything that's relevant in your particular organization, in your setting. Quote 4, eventually, if people aren't catching the ball, you have to stop throwing it. So again, I'm taking this quote out of context and applying it to leadership, because there's different parts of the Let Them Theory book, and they were talking about relationships. So giving examples. So Mel was giving examples of friendships, of romantic relationships, and she was discussing a lot around career as well. So if you've read the book and you're like, okay, Jasmine has a different take on it than Mel Robbins herself, well, that's the beauty of when we discuss books or we discuss movies. We all put our different opinion, different spin on it, and we all have our own life experience and professional experience that also allows us to add our own flair to some of these quotes. So eventually, if people aren't catching the ball, you have to stop throwing it. And speaking specifically to leadership, is what this looks like is, and I'll kind of explain my understanding of the analogy in case if you haven't read the book. So if we're always the ones we're the fixers, we're the solvers, we might be training up our staff, for example, might be training up new team members. Maybe we're mentoring and supporting new leaders as well. And if we're doing our part, so we're giving people information, resources, training them up, but then they're not taking the resources we're giving them. So imagine if we're catching the ball to someone, and I'm the worst. This is probably the worst analogy for someone like me, who I'm notoriously shocking at holding, at catching balls. I'm certainly not a ball sport kind of lady. I'm more into, indoor, non-competitive, non-team sports type of person. But imagine if you're throwing the ball at someone like repeatedly because you want to engage in a game with them, and then they're just standing there, they're not catching it. And eventually you're going to stop trying. And so as leaders, if we're always throwing the ball to others and they're not catching it, this can look like if we're constantly rescuing staff that are struggling. So sometimes we have staff that continuously make the same mistakes over and over again, despite the fact that we've given them additional training, we've mentored them, we've got them to shadow more experienced and senior staff members, and they're continuously making the same mistakes. That's that's an example of where it may be time to stop throwing the ball. And leading on from that, where we might find ourselves fixing everyone's mistakes, taking on work that belongs to someone else. So I've been guilty of this myself as a leader, but we all know everything we're good at, right? We know, okay, I'm really skilled in this area. If I were to stop and train someone else in this area, it would take 3 times as long because I have to explain it to them, support them if they have any questions, double check that they've done it right. And I could have just done it myself in like a third of the time. And I hear you. I absolutely was like that. And sometimes I still am. And I have students that do placement in my business. And sometimes I catch myself thinking, is it worth me spending hours teaching something that I could do myself in 15 minutes? And depending how busy I am and how urgent the priority is, sometimes I actually think, okay, it's something I urgently need done, so I need to do it myself. But if it's not something that is as time sensitive, then potentially you could spend the time and upskill someone else. But if we are continuously taking on additional workload, additional pressures, and other people aren't doing the same, they're not reciprocating, then it would become quite frustrating after a while. So we might need to actually put some boundaries in place that actually acknowledge what's a reasonable workload for yourself and what are things that you absolutely need to delegate to other people. And there's a difference between being supportive of people and training them up and mentoring them and also preventing their growth. So it's a bit of a balance that we need to be mindful of, I guess, how much time we have to train people up in all the things that we do, or can we train them up in some areas so that they can grow, but then not do everything for them, fix all their mistakes, take on all the additional work that they find challenging, so that essentially makes them never able to catch the ball themselves because you're the only one throwing it. So just think about, are there some ways that you're doing too much for people that you may be keeping them stuck and then preventing them from actually progressing with their knowledge within the organization, for example? And my 5th and final quote is, "You're never stuck. That's a lie you're telling yourself." This one is quite harsh. It's quite direct, but Mel Robbins is quite direct, and sometimes we need to hear directness, because if people don't tell us straight, if they don't tell it exactly how it is, sometimes we fail to listen to the message. We fail to hear the message, like a tough love approach. So Mel Robbins, in her book, although she is gentle in how she delivers a lot of the amazing gems in the book, she also has a tough love approach. So you're never stuck. That's a lie you're telling yourself. So many of us have barriers, absolutely. And for some people who have entered the helping professions, it may have taken you a lot longer than some of your colleagues to get into the industry. It may have taken you double the amount of time as your colleagues to finish your qualifications. And I think of myself as the perfect example of this. So I probably have taken the longest amount of time to complete my undergraduate degree. Normally, the undergraduate degrees, on average, they're 3 years. Well, the Bachelor of Arts that I did as my undergrad should have been a 3-year degree. And because I had a lot of other things happening, so I was, juggling work. I'd had, I think, about 2 or 3 interstate moves while studying. I also became a parent, all sorts of different life stages, juggles. It took me, I don't have the exact figure in front of me. I'd need to bring up my resume. I would estimate it probably took me, I'm embarrassed to admit, I don't know, 6 or 7 years to complete a 3-year bachelor degree. And when I completed that degree, it wasn't even the sector or the industry that I ended up working in anyway. So I ended up doing further postgrad studies anyway. But I can acknowledge that I certainly had barriers to sort of enter the helping professions and a lot of other things. And I could have easily just thought, okay, I'm stuck. It's taken me so long to finish this bachelor degree that I never actually used. And it could have prevented me from moving forward to eventually finding and loving social work as my professional discipline. So while we all have many barriers, there's certainly things that we can do if we feel ourselves a bit stuck. And some of the ideas that I have, as I was planning this episode, I wrote down a few ideas, and these are things that I've integrated into my own life when I felt stuck, but some of them are actually asking others for help. So if you're managing a professional role in the helping professions, and perhaps you're also a leader, many of my listeners are also in leadership roles. You might be managing parenting or caring responsibilities, and you're managing kids' sports, you're trying to get yourself to the gym a minimum of once a week, you've got dinner, housework, all sorts of things. And if you're in a single parent or single adult household, you don't have anyone who's there with you necessarily to be able to just say, okay, well, I don't really have the time and space to finish loading the dishwasher or finish dinner. Can you take over? Some of us don't have that luxury. So think about who else is in your network that you can ask for help. So if you've had a really long week at work and the thought of cooking yet another dinner on a Friday evening, it's just too much. Can you ask someone for help? Could you introduce going to your in-laws or going to your parents or going to someone's house for dinner every Friday to take the load off you? Seeking supervision. There's so much complexity in the work that we do. So seeking opinion and consultation from someone else, such as your clinical supervisor, is a great option if you're feeling stuck. Changing just one habit. So when I was mentioning before about my physical health well-being wheel, if you are currently not doing anything, you're not able to do anything at the moment to optimize or enhance your own physical well-being, is there one habit you could introduce? It could look at something as small as going for a walk, one afternoon a week. Or if you work 5 days a week, could you commit to going for a walk on your lunch break 1 day a week? So think about changing one habit or introducing one new habit that may help you. If you're feeling stuck, and if you're someone who at the moment isn't getting any physical movement into their day regularly, you could feel stuck and think, well, I'll never be able to set myself any health and fitness goals because I'm currently not doing anything. So you might be feeling stuck and a bit unmotivated at that point. But think about what is one small action you can take. If you're feeling stuck in your particular career, try looking at other roles. Are there any roles either within your organization or outside of your organization? What are the options for you career-wise? Sometimes having a difficult but much needed conversation is also really important. If you're feeling stuck, if you're a manager, for example, if you're a leader in the helping professions and you're struggling with a particular staff member that isn't maybe performing at the expected standard, and that's making you feel stuck with being able to support their professional growth as their manager, and you might be feeling stuck, it could be time to have a bit of a difficult conversation with them about how you can support them if other approaches may not have worked for you. So even just taking some of these steps can create a significant improvement for you over time. So just to repeat those 5 quotes from the amazing Mel Robbins in her book, The Let Them Theory, they are: you are the only love of your entire life. No one owes you anything, but you owe yourself everything. Are these the table scraps you're prepared to accept, or would you like a 5-star meal? Eventually, if people aren't catching the ball, you have to stop throwing it. And finally, you're never stuck. That's a lie you're telling yourself. Out of the 5 quotes, is there one that resonated with you above any of the others? And I ask you to think about, what are you currently giving everyone else that you're not actually giving to yourself? Are you someone who gives so much care, thought, and consideration to making sure everyone else is comfortable, that all your clients have the services that they need, but meanwhile you're overdue for a medical checkup that you haven't yet scheduled? So in what ways are you leaving yourself depleted and ensuring everyone else has the resources that they need? What have you accepted for yourself that you wouldn't want your team or your colleagues accepting for themselves? And if you have created your own wellbeing wheel, what would be on your wheel? And you could focus on different areas. So I focused on my physical health, but I am going to be designing more of the different aspects of my own well-being. So I am going to be creating a mental health one and a spiritual health as well. So whichever aspect of well-being you'd like to focus on, try drawing out a wheel with different segments. And what's one thing you owe yourself this week? Not anyone else, yourself. And I want to leave you all on this quote: you are the only love of your entire life. And with that in mind, are you treating yourself with that love? And caring for yourself isn't luxurious or selfish or self-indulgent or any of those sell words. It's part of ensuring that you're able to continue to do the work that you do as a helping professional and leader. And if you are a leader and you're listening, I'm currently taking applications for my upcoming Leadership Supervision Circle. So if you're interested in that, please send me an email or a DM. And my other 2 groups that occur in 3-month rotation for helping professional practitioners and helping professional business owners, those groups run for 3-month periods, and you can book those via my website. It's just the Leadership Supervision Circle that is by application only. Thank you for joining me on Not Another PD. If this episode was helpful and you'd like to find out more, you'll find ways to work with me in the show notes. And if there's a topic you would like covered or someone you think should be on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Remember, clear boundaries don't just protect our clients, they protect us too.